I'm here with David Loughenbury, who's a hugely experienced technology CIO, COO leader, just to discuss I suppose, the last 12 months and understand from his point of view some of the challenges and nuances of changes of the way that we've had to operate. And I really appreciate your time, David. Do you want to just sort of give a brief overview of you and your background and what you do as a starting point?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alistair. My background is really helping organisations define and deliver and embed change, understanding the strategy and really aligning that to the board goal and objectives, delivering digital transformation, M&A due diligence, and really helping organisations optimise and deliver quality IT solutions that really meet the needs of the business.
Brilliant. I think you're well placed to sort of answer some of the key questions. I think that the way that you sort of sit across technology and operations and business, I think some of the answers you'll be able to give will be just a really, really strong insight across the board. As a starting point, sort of from a tech or from a leadership perspective, what do you think one of the sort of main or the immediate impacts we saw due to sort of the COVID restrictions, and what did we observe from people and businesses?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the last role I covered actually was a little bit more than CIO, so I actually covered all of change, IT, security, procurement, and the customer-facing operational elements. So quite a lot of the organisation really, once COVID started coming on the horizon, started looking to IT and the operations as to how does the organisation carry on running, what are the potential implications. I think even back in February, we still weren't quite expecting the full home working. As soon as it became real, that was likely to be the case. I think all roads turned to IT. What was really interesting is a lot of companies had DR facilities and DR operations in place, but every country in the UK needed them at the same time, and that clearly isn't something that really works very well. In terms of where we were actually quite well placed. We'd implemented Skype, or the precursor to Skype, back in 2013 Link. We had a call centre that was a virtual call centre because the business was really looking at flexibility, the ability to pass calls between different centres and different sites. And as a result, the planning we did back in 2012 and implemented in 2013 really put our business on a good footing in terms of the ability to adapt and move quickly. So what we saw at the time was everybody needed to get home and work at home. So for us, that was actually quite straightforward because people could take the kit and work at home. The biggest challenge everybody in the UK had at the time was getting hold of laptops. And that just was a race for anybody who had anything looking like a laptop. Was just crazy at the time. And we took the short-term measure of just take your kit home. If you've got a car, stick your PCs in the boot. Everything was secured and encrypted. So from that perspective, we weren't really running a risk, but we got people working at home. And the whole business effectively was working at home within 2 days. For the people without cars, we became a taxi service, so it was kind of Uber on demand for people taking people and PCs home. So it was quite chaotic and manic at one stage. I think what really was interesting though was when we started then looking at, okay, we've now gone through the crisis of everybody's now at home and working at home successfully. What changes really need to happen in the business? And again, we were probably quite a fortunate position because we'd actually had a review a few years earlier and moved all the business to this kind of technology of Skype and virtual call centre. The other two processes really that we kind of struggled and had to really think about properly was how do we handle checks, because we still have a very, very small number of checks, but not many, but we still need to process them. And scanning, and again, how do you handle scanning when the scanners are in the office, and the scanners are often quite big things in many of our offices. So those two things aside, everything else worked without any issues or incidents. So in some ways, I feel quite lucky that we had that sort of level of impact. But I guess really it comes down to the planning that was done a few years earlier. I think what did happen and what was interesting at the time was all the roads came to IT. IT was at the kind of forefront of everything, and the challenge we had at the time was actually almost triaging the effort from IT. So we've made sure that the IT team were able to get on and deliver people's homework environments safely and efficiently and quickly, and not spend time on phone calls talking about the ifs, whats and maybes of how do we actually make some things work. So we kind of worked out very quickly that there was a small less hands-on part of the team that were fielding all the calls and would almost act as the interface, whilst the guys on the ground were just given the freedom to get on and do what they needed to do to get everybody home. And we also gave them budgets if they needed to buy things like extension cables and things, just go and sort it. So we became fairly relaxed in terms of some of our usual procurement processes. But as I say, everybody was at home within 48 hours. 80% were at home within 24 hours. So we were actually quite quick at reacting to it.
I think it was great actually to see, and across a number of business, speaking to a lot of IT leaders, that stuff that normally, and I'm saying stuff, I mean that transition to home and then the adoption of sort of video tools, it happened really quickly. Like in the past, like you'd have discussions around, home working and cloud-based solutions taking so much time to be allowed by the board, I suppose, which was great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was interesting. I mean, the biggest thing for me that I found remarkable was everybody across the country actually got everybody working at home within days, if not a week or two. And actually, if most companies had run that as a project to move people at home and get people working, you'd probably be looking at 6 to 12 months, 18 months maybe to get people working at home with a kind of bureaucracy and process around it. And it was really interesting that with that common cause, that common purpose, the fire that was lit, everybody moved to home working. Everybody was grateful that the companies were reacting quickly. And I think loosening some of the purse strings to sort some of the kind of peripheral issues was fine. People accepted that we couldn't get laptops, so they had to take a desktop home, and we'd sort it in the midterm. And that level of flexibility, that level of teamwork across the whole business was great to see. Actually, everybody was keen to make it work, keen to help, and keen to collaborate with each other. So everybody was on board, and it was probably one of the few times where you've had 100% of people aligned behind the common purpose of get everybody at home and working safely as quickly as possible.
I think it's that old adage of it, when you're looking at change on the whole, like a forced change, sometimes there's that immediate like reticence, but I think you got that commonality that everyone knew that this change was needed. It was almost essential, probably helped with that, because normally you get that resisted. You change coffee and to a different coffee brand in some offices and sets on fire, doesn't it? So no, it makes perfect sense.
I guess that was quite critical. We were really mindful of people's mental health and well-being. So people are creatures of comfort. We all like going in the office and talking to people, having the chats by the coffee machine and in the corridors and things. And without that, we made a great strides to have regular huddles as a team. The chief exec on a weekly basis would talk to all the people managers around the business in a kind of big town hall broadcast, if you like, and Q&As on the back of that. All managers were encouraged to spend as much time talking and listening and helping. And actually, what was interesting is we got more probably two-way conversations at the time than we'd had before, because even though people sat in the office, I'm not sure people necessarily talked as openly about some of the challenges and some of the issues. It was generally chit-chat about the football or other things, whereas with people working at home, it was much more focused on what do I need to do in my job, what do I need to help me move forward.
I suppose my next question was going to be around, you probably touched on it as with sort of the comms and stuff, but sort of the challenges faced, how did you specifically or the organisation evolve and overcome some of the early challenges that you faced?
Yeah, I think there was a combination of skills and tools in that. So the skills that everybody was encouraged to dial up was really around conversations, chats, really communicating better, and actually clarity of message is really important when people are more remote. So in some ways we found people were listening more because they were actually free from some of the distractions in the office. Some people were more distracted by other things at home, like the dogs or the children, but generally it was about clarity of message, about making sure people had understood and replay some of the messages that were really critical. I think empathy was a really big one as well, because we had to accept that certain people just weren't going to be able to work easily. So some people were in shared houses with lots of other people, all huddled the same router, and 4 people trying to talk on the phone at the same time just didn't work. People in flats where maybe they were sat on the bed all day with a laptop on the knee, just it's not a great working environment.
No.
People with kids who were at home. So there's a huge part of our business that was looking at how do we get the majority of the business doing the majority of what we need to do, and where can we actually loosen some of the controls that allow people to get on and do the job, accepting that not everybody can do what they might do in the office. And 80-90% of people's productivity is probably as good as you're going to get in some situations. If you've got a kid and a baby in the next room and you've got to look after them as well, being the sole parent at home, you can't expect people to be constantly at work. So we just found that being more empathetic, listening to people, understanding, trying to work with people. What we got back from that was actually payback in spades. So people in the evenings in and doing things out of hours, or doing shifts with their partners, so that one would take child duties during the day, the other would take child duties later on. And what we found is, we didn't really lose any productivity. We didn't really lose any or have any customer issues. It was very much the team kind of railed together and worked through the challenges of whatever domestic issues were going on with people's homes. So I think that there was a whole lot of skills there in terms of communication, listening, empathy, that were really critical. And I think actually, I really hope those stay in the business going forward, and people don't lose sight of that, because I think that was a real kind of wake up that people are critical to all businesses. I think then there were some key tools that helped. So for us, as I said earlier, we were already on VoIP, Skype. We had been for 7 years prior to the COVID impact. We were already on virtual call centres. So for us, moving people to work pretty much anywhere in the world just worked, and that wasn't really a problem. So as long as people have got adequate networks into the home, which not everybody did, people could work pretty much seamlessly wherever they were. But key to all of this was collaboration, and using some tools online, making better use of some of the features in Skype and the like that we didn't use previously, just help people feel like they were together and working as a team through the challenges. And I think that level of interaction really helped the business almost gel and bond. We also had an added challenge at the time of, we were actually going through a merger, and a merger and having to announce that the merger's underway just at the time the lockdown kicked in, added a whole level of complexity and challenge that people are then concerned about. What's my job? What's the future? How are things going to work? And that kind of added a whole layer of challenge of not seeing anybody face to face, having to do the briefings remotely. That was a whole added level of stress that we didn't really need, but at the end of it, it all worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I think just go back to back to the empathy part. I think the customer empathy was something that personally we'd not seen over a period of time. So for our industry, just stopped completely from all the way through April of last year, and there were times where I'd sit and just reflect and think, oh God, what's the future going to look like? But actually, the I can imagine, especially in the industry you're from, sort of the customer empathy and the actual understanding that maybe a transaction or a process that should take X amount of time might be X amount of time plus 12 hours. I think that the whole of the nation almost sort of understood a little bit more, which helped, I think with some challenges.
We had we interestingly had some customers who, they were calling up agents, and the agents clearly had dogs and things in the background, or children. And what you found was there was kind of quite good banter with the customers. Yeah. They're all expecting that people are struggling to be in work. They're not quite sure what's the level of service they're going to get, where people are working, how it's working for the individuals. And there were lots of conversations about how are you, where are you working? Is that your dog in the background? Is that your child in the background? What you got was actually a real good level of rapport with the customers, almost as a result of COVID was the icebreaker conversation for customers, and you generally had some quite engaging conversations with customers that maybe you didn't get time to have when you're in the kind of normal office environment. So actually, in some ways, everyone was looking out for each other, and our customers in particular were almost asking and checking in on our colleagues, and that was really nice actually. That you kind of members and customers are really concerned about the people that are working in the organisation, which was fantastic to listen to.
As a leader, as an IT leader, a business leader, what do you think was the biggest lesson that we learned over the last 12, 18 months?
Where do you start on that one?
I don't know.
This has been said by many people, but had I tried to get a project of moving everybody to work from home and run that as a project, I could have seen that taking 6, 12, 18 months to get everybody into that kind of home working or flexible working pattern as we consulted and discussed and agreed and almost polished things around the edges. It's always the last 5 or 10% that take most of the time. And actually what we executed was a project where everybody went home within 2 days. And, you know, that level of speed, the level of rigor, the level of teamwork involved in that was phenomenal. And as I say, you sometimes have to look back at projects in the BAU world. How much process are we putting around projects sometimes that are stopping things moving forward? How much are we overlaying governance to remove risk? And actually what we're introducing is more delays, more time, more cost, and probably more risk inadvertently through trying to control things more. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you kind of go back to it's a free-for-all, but I think there is a better balance to be struck on projects, and almost a nuanced discussion about how much risk, how much pace do we really need for this particular project. And for me, that was a great example of if everybody's together and everybody's on board and aligned, you can do phenomenal things extremely quickly. And actually, the whole country that did it, so it wasn't one culture, one particular team, one particular company. Every company, every sector, everywhere did the same thing. So, you know, there's no issues around culture, sector, or anything else here. This is about how we choose to operate as an organisation. So I think that for me was probably the biggest thing. I think the other one for me was the criticality of communication and leadership, even more so when people are remote. So, you know, making sure that your team are aware of what's required, what's needed, where they're going, where things are heading, being almost overly dialing up the communication. And actually what you get back from it is people understand, people buy in, people get aligned, and you can have debates earlier than you might have had in the office. I think we seem to find that in the project world in particular, people were questioning more, whereas in the office, people were making assumptions about what people were saying rather than actually questioning and really drilling into it. What we seemed to get was better conversations, better clarity, and better and quicker solutions as a result. So, you know, so generally better leadership, better communication, better dialogue was all key for me. And I think all those lessons, you know, hopefully, again, we won't forget those in a hurry, because they all brought a lot of value to my business. I'm sure lots of other businesses out there.
Yeah, I think there was an element of empowerment as well, though. It was almost like, especially that project of getting everybody working from home, it was empowering technology to deliver what they could, like. But I also think there was a certain element of passing of trust into employees, which I think leaders, especially in my industry, had never had before. You know, there was this trust, distrust in such a lack of flexibility around where you operate your job. But it was almost an immediate, okay, we're all empowered to have to do our job now remotely, but we've got to trust you to do it, and we will. And I think that level of empowerment was really resonated with people as well. It's definitely something that I look back on, and I think as we move forward, something that big lesson for me was just empowering great people to do the job because they can, irrelevant of where they're sat.
Absolutely. I think everybody goes to work to do a good job. So you know, if you start this, then nobody goes into work to stuff things up or do things badly. So, you know, what we found is the more we trusted people, the more they were prepared to give back. Now, you know, there were a few people that didn't, but the vast majority of our teams, as I said, they were working almost self-imposed shifts where they were kind of working around childcare. They were picking up bits of work that could be done outside of normal hours where they had challenges. And, you know, the business as a whole rallied around those people and helped the organisation move forward and help the individuals, because, you know, some of the people were really having some tough challenges with a whole family of kids at home all of a sudden and trying to work and be on the phone. And, you know, that's just a nightmare for parents. So trusting, understanding, listening, as I said, the empathy, really key elements. And I think if you empower people, generally people deliver more and better. And maybe not necessarily the way you wanted things to be delivered, but you know, I think actually that brings in some more creativity and some more ideas and some more solutions. So, you know, at the end, it was all great. So lots of positive that trust element for me.
If we fast forward 12 months, how will I suppose technology, IT leaders, business leaders, how will we continue to evolve?
It's a really good question. I think the real key for me is this has almost been a reset button for the role of CIO and IT leaders. And, you know, organizations historically had different views about IT. Some were absolutely investing and really using IT as a competitive advantage. Others were sweating things so much that, you know, they were well sell by date and needed to do something, but weren't prepared to invest. I think what this has done now is it's made people realise the implications of not having IT. I'd actually say that every organisation really in the sort of FTSE 500 really is an IT company. Some focus on recruitment, some focus on manufacturing, some focus on retail, some banking. But without technology, almost entirely every single company is going to struggle to survive. And therefore, people have now realised how critical IT is to the organisation, and that they need to make sure their IT systems are in a good place. Now, that doesn't always mean spending lots of money, but it does mean having open discussions with the IT leadership in an organisation to understand where are the risks and opportunities, where could IT power the business to grow more, where is IT running risks that maybe could hurt the business in the future, and really trying to understand and get under the skin of what does the business really need to do, what's almost the de minimis it needs to do now. But for me, that big reset button of IT leaders now should feel more empowered to have better conversations, more meaningful conversations with the exec and board. And I think the board equally needs to demand from its IT team that it understands the risks the organisation is running, and make sure it really has got the right team in place, or supports the team in place with individuals who really can help the organisation move forward. So I think the biggest thing for me is I hope that reset button is something that a lot of IT leaders act on, because I think they've now got the opportunity on the back of COVID to really outline the importance of IT and outline the importance of their role and what they can do. On the back of it, clearly, everybody's gone digital. Digital is the new mantra. I think digital is an often misused word, so every company's got its own interpretation of what digital means, but that's going to be critical for all organisations. And again, looking at how IT change support digital moving forward is really key. So how does a business really make sure it's doing enough in the digital space? It can't get left behind these days. Everybody's got to move into it. It's almost the cost of doing business. And again, understanding how and where to invest the time, effort and money is really key. And again, I think the IT leaders have got a great opportunity to help the businesses move forward with aspirations around digital, aspirations around how it resources and runs the business. And hopefully the IT leaders have got an opportunity now to become bigger voices in the business and really have more of an impact than maybe they had the opportunity to in the past.
Yeah, great. It's that linkage, the modern linkage now between IT, digital and marketing, I think is stronger than ever. I think that that's my perception anyway, my perception of digital and where I see it fitting in a business. But I think it links core operations and marketing and technology together closer than ever before. And like for me, genuinely, I just hope that we as a nation, we're great at falling into antiquated ways, aren't we? And it's just fingers crossed that we don't forget, and we do. We know that we've had a reset, and we continue to action is really important. That's going to be huge over the next 12 months for sure.
Yeah, great. And so many great technologies coming around these days now that, whether you're looking at AI, whether you're looking at some of the machine learning and, the ability that cloud gives you to move faster, become more agile, pivot the organization faster. There's lots of things now that businesses can do and should be looking at, and, really, really more aware of the opportunities that technology can bring to the organizations. And again, understanding the opportunities and not being caught on the back foot, I think is going to be quite key for organizations. Digital has moved so far in the last 18 months since COVID that, almost the world's unrecognizable from where we were at the start of 2020. So COVID has been the biggest single digital disruptor in the marketplace. And, if that pace of change continues now, it'll be interesting to see where we pan out. As people also return to work, I think there's going to be a whole lot of new challenges that come on the table. So how do people work? Or where do people work? Do they work at home? Do they work in the office? Is it a hybrid model? Where do you source talent and skills? Do you need a team in the UK? Can you work on a more virtual, worldwide basis and get the best talent from anywhere? So I think there's lots of questions that are going to be put on the table, and organisations will need to work out what they want to do, how they want to do it best, and how they can deliver the most meaningful change for them as an organisation. But for me, people are at the heart of this, and working with the teams to really make sure that you get the best from the people is going to be really key for organisations moving forward.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Brilliant. Well, thank you. Thanks for your time, David. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the conversation.
Thanks, David.